Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I live in the English Midlands, which is basically lots of black rock craggy highlands and swamp, forested lowlands in between villages and towns that slowly spread due to constant housing developments. People consider it a problem in terms of local identity, where villages spread and join like mold in a petri dish and consume the wilderness to become essentially the doomsayer's example of the beginnings of giant arcologies replacing a natural countryside environs. My town started as a few houses for quarry workers on a single road between two villages in the 1700s, and by 1990 had only grown to maybe 300 homes. Then the housing estate building began and has never stopped, and now there are thousands of homes and the redwood forest is all gone. It's the same for every village in our county, where the distance between the last house in each village has gone from a few hours' walk to a few minutes. Except for one village. This village has 4 roads with a school, decrepit manor house, a disused and empty church, and a single bus stop not updated since the 1980s with maybe 40 houses. There are no modern amenities, no solar-powered streetlights, no green recycling wheelie bins, not even bins for people to put their bags of dog shit when walking their pets. It still has a road without tarmac, and around it are all empty fields with strange rusted old iron constructs that aren't buildings, but closer to bridges you see meant to carry heavy loads across wide rivers, but in the middle of a field no river has ever run through. Every harvest festival time around September, as summer ends and autumn begins, the town is dotted with wicker scarecrow, like things acting out strange pagan acts. The children wear little animal outfits, things like goats and sheep, and the men and women wear these old-timey beekeeper masks, like wicker spirals on pillowcases. Sometimes this tree by the schoolyard carved into this totem polish thing with an owl, badger and stag on it is painted orange by a man wearing a wreath of ivy and green face paint. Nobody knows why. Nobody moves there. Nobody has ever moved to a nearby village from there. It sounds like something that should happen on some backwoods island off the coast like in The Wicker Man or Lovecraft's Innsmouth. But it's just this strange island of isolation in the middle of this circuit of villages being brought together by housing developments that oddly avoid this place entirely. We are told never to go through after dark alone because of rough-uns, and once driving slowly through on the way home from college in the autumn of 2009, with a tire damaged by a new speed bump on the winding roads close to my college town, to curb boy racers crashing the shitmobiles their dads bought them, I saw a bonfire built on one of those weird iron things and folk were dancing and screaming around it. And when they saw my car, stoned the shit out of it as I sped past. I called the police, but they assumed I was a dumb college kid who had a few too many cans and drove into a ditch or something. I assumed at the time they were just our version of hillbillies, some insular village keeping up old habits lost to time and paranoid rude at any outsiders, like some tired cliche come to life. Arseholes who are rude for no good reason, but nothing beyond that, right? Then in 2010 we got hit with a lot of rain, like a month of rain every day. Remember I mentioned we are an area of swampy areas? They describe that as floodplains during these building expansions, and for good reason. I came out of college one day and my car was a goner. Entire gearbox blew out and I was pissed. I joined way too many at the bus stop. Turns out the flooding had gone over the motorway and caused a pileup, and the buses were multiple buses late. In a TV shirt, jeans, and sneakers because I plan to drive home safe and dry, I get pissier and pissier till I decide fuck it. I'm walking home. The quickest way was to follow the motorway after the next village from the town my college was in. But there was a problem. The flooding had half of it in the river. I had to make a detour, and guess where? By the time I got there, my sneakers were full of water. My clothes were soaked thanks to assholes who do speed up when passing you to splash you, and I was knackered after walking 15 miles in a downpour in soaked clothes. So the next bus stop I see, I take a break, right? Well, there was a bus stop in Creepy Town and I chose to stop there. Bad idea. It was basically this upside-down L. A hard right angle of metal frame and ancient plastic windows, all fogged up with grime and weathering. There was a small bench at some point long ripped away. So I'm standing there cold, angry, and wanting to crash as my sneaker I would learn has giant 2-pound-sized raw blistered on both heels, and I still had 6 miles to go. I didn't want to be there, but it wasn't dark yet, and it wasn't quite the time of year for the summerizal rejects, so who cares, right? Then a bus rounded the corner. I guess in the hour or so it took to get there, the buses caught up. I stood forwards with my student pass and waved the driver down. He shook his head at me and kept going. After muttering "for fuck's sake," I did all I could do. I started walking after it in the direction home. It was dark all day, but the sun was coming down at this point. I was cold, angrier, and just wanting to collapse on my bed so I get to trudging. As I'm walking along, I notice that every house has a curtain pulled slightly aside. You can't see them clearly, but every house has someone watching me in it. Nosy bastards, right? That's what I was thinking. But a couple of houses has some dudes coming out, staring at me and saying things like, "Move on now, you aren't meant to be here." Which just had me annoying. It was a public footpath on the road. It wasn't private property. Who the hell were these assholes to say that? Probably the same ones that threw stones at my now dead car. I'm leaving the village since it's only a few roads across, and the one road to get out is about half a mile of swamp. The ditches have burst and there's mud, horse shit, and straw everywhere. Screw this, I'm cutting across the field closest to the main road I can follow almost all the way to my house, one of the ones with the iron bridges in. Trying not to get sucked down into the mud and glad it's not horse shit, I slowly trudge through the field towards one of these things, assuming it's some form of platform, and I get a bit of a break crossing this large field that's almost as big as the town. At this point, I am getting a bit freaked out since 3 of the good old boys have been following me now, and my MP3 player is dead, so I can't put on music. I'm not some asshole in a creepypasta here. I'm tired, wet, and angry, and wondering if some assholes are about to start and fight, and what do I do? But when I get near the iron thing, they start to back off. They make these weird hang gestures and mutter and turn back yelling, "We ain't come to the end of our time yet, fuck off, townie." And crisis averted. But I get a good look at this shit, which clearly isn't a bridge. First off, I think it's some strange kind of cattle grid. The thing farmers put at open gates for cars to pass without cows being able to walk out. But it's not. It's some kind of drain. The ironwork around it is about 2 meters high, bolted and thick as girders, but looks like some blend of Stonehenge and student art project, and is featureless rusted iron bar, one painted on white lizard. I notice movement around me and the whole thing is swarming with lizards. Now this is the English Midlands. Maybe you saw a newt as a kid back when things were cleaner and more wild once in a blue moon, but 2010 outside a nature preserve? Never. And not hundreds of all shapes and sizes. It was like the giant thing had access to some roiling pit of lizards, clearly signed as being of some purpose related to them. Why? What made those guys back off from it? Afraid of getting a lizard up my leg, I continued on, weirded out, and made it to the road and limped home. I get home, collapse in bed, and fall ill with a cold for a week, but that's it. No who was phoned to moment here. Real life is not that interesting, I guess, but it stuck with me. Why a lizard hole? What do the bonfires there do? Is it a pagan thing or some specific thing to this village? Where the hell did all the lizards come from? Is it never built around because of them? What about the iron constructs? And why are the people such rude dickheads? I've Googled it but never come up with anything, and the old folks in town still knocking around. I know who might know anything are all old and senile, and I doubt many below the age of 40 in my village were born within 100 miles, let alone this country anymore, so it remains a mystery to me, but a strangely captivating one. One day all the villages around it will be one whole, no space between them. Modernity from end to end in one big concrete loop. But this remains, defiant to the march of time and infrastructure. How and why, who knows? But as far as I can tell, they were here before any of these villages, and not for anything like a quarry or trade route. Not even farming. They were. They are and they will be, but only they know why.
At a nearby manor house that's turned into a theme park, there's a big tree that the former lord was told was cursed. Every branch that fell would be a family member's life, so he chained the tree together. They made a horror dark ride about it. A storm knocked a bunch off and there were several heart attacks in the family.
I lived in a one-road, one-pub, and no-shop village in Hertfordshire as a child. Harvest and solstices were marked with festivals and rituals. There was an active coven in the woods, and you'd go see an old woman in the village if you were ill before you went to a doctor. Wasn't that freaky at the time? Just a lovely community. In retrospect, the strangest tradition we had was bleeding the corn. It wasn't actually corn, it was wheat. We'd make corn dollies out of the last bit of the harvested wheat on the second harvest. The children of the village, there were only about 6 of us, would cut their hand and give some of their blood to keep the wheat alive all winter and to say thank you for the harvest. There'd be a bit of a contest of who was best, and it was quite fun. You'd keep the corn dolly in your house and chat to it and keep it warm and safe all winter. When planting season came, which was early in the year, everyone would have a little party, wish the corn dollies well, and walk them back to the field. They would get buried there back where they were harvested from. The wheat was then thought to have a bit of the children's personality in it when it grew. Part of me regrets moving to the city when I became an adult.
Oh, didn't bleed into a corn dolly as a kid. That's as English as placing a dead rabbit outside your back door for dead family when the corpse walk night happens on May 13th.
Glad it's not just me. It seemed weirder writing it down than I remembered it being. As for dead animals, one of the old boys had a dead barn owl hammered to the door of one of his outbuildings, wings outstretched, just nailed up.
My great-grandmother, a Sorbic woman, strictly Orthodox, was saved by Radhost during her escape from the Russians, and her mother had seen a rusalka drowning a man near Jotunheimen. The spirits are benevolent. Eastern Europe is still full of them. To this day, no one really believed her, so she stopped talking about these 2 occasions altogether before she died. This made me really sad, because she always used to tell great tales of her old home and culture. She belonged to the very few people that were practicing the old ways of Slavic paganism. Her village mostly worshipped Radhost and Baalbog. The Rusalka story was following. She was visiting her aunt in 1914 in Jotunheimen. She was walking along the local stream Koselbruch, saw a man fishing. His fishing line and bait got stuck in the water. He went in to get it out after a while of pulling. He reached into the water. Suddenly, 2 pairs of hands reach out and drag him into the water. She was afraid and ran back to the village to get help. Some folks ran to the place with her. They pulled the man out of the stream who seemed to have fought very hard. Her aunt told her to stay away from the river. Funny thing is, there is actually a whole history of this town, which is now known as Schwarzkollm. There once lived a mighty black magician in the town's mill with 11 pupils who he turned into ravens at night to spy on the villagers. He sacrificed his pupils in exchange for longer life, but he was killed by one of his scholars who stole his magic book. It was called Kurata, which is basically a collection of spells written on coal paper with silver ink.
Me, home county in England, 6 or 7 years old. Dad went to prison, whole load of drama. Had to move with my mum and sister to a tiny village, proper tiny. 1 road, 1 pub, not even a shop, no public transport, no chapel or church. Surrounded by ancient woodland and some farms. We're the only kids in the village. The village keeps old ways, the pre-Christian English religion. Pretty fun, nice community, mostly older. Learn loads about nature. Pretty cool on solstices and equinoxes and shit. Village fates and ceremonies, nothing too dramatic. Harvest time comes around. Last field of wheat being mown. Yo Anon's mum, time to do our harvest thing. Let's go, bring the kids. All go up to the wheat field playing some music and singing. Nice time to be honest. JPG. About 6 foot square of wheat left. Sweet old lady is like, with the last bit we make a dolly. Make cool corn dollies with an old lady and sister, about 10 or so for people around the village to have. We need to keep the wheat safe and alive through the winter anon. Asks me and my sister to put our hands out. Sick, gonna get a pound or something. She pulls out a blade and cuts our hands. Mum, WTF is this? Mum just smiles and nods. Both drip blood on all the dollies. Get to take home 1 each, others go to other houses. Mad village party happens. Look after our blood-stained wheat dolls all winter, chatting to them and shit. The end of winter. Yoanon's mum, time to take the dolls back. Go back to the field with the dolls. Everyone having a lovely time. Bury the dolls in the field. Sow a few seeds. The farmer does the rest. I lived there for 4 years. Moved to a proper town. Realized this wasn't normal for kids to do. Moved to London in my late teens. Become urbanized. Missed the village community.
Here's a story from when I went to visit my great-grandpa in Norway. Little background, my family is old Norwegian. As far as we can track ourselves back, we have been in Scandinavia. My grandpa moved to Washington around 17 or 18 and had my father, who had me. Anyways, my great-grandpa is this big old bear of a man. Pushing 80 then, I'm sure he could have wrecked most people in a fight. Like I said, my family is old, and he still practiced the old ways. Covered in Norse tattoos, wears a Mjolnir pendant, etc. He lives just in the foothills of Jotunheimen in our family's ancestral house. The original plot is probably a solid 700 years old and has had a Sorensen living there the entire time. Anyways, turn 18, finish high school, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. My father says I should go to the homeland and visit my great-grandpa. The mountain air and rough work will be good for me. Agree. And about a week later, I'm there. Closest town to my great-grandpa's house is probably over 100 kilometers away. My great-grandpa is a brusque man, very quiet, but I can feel how happy he is to have me there. Feels good, bro.jpg. Been there for a couple months at this point, mostly doing odd jobs in and out of town, logging, etc. Practicing my Norwegian. My great-grandpa is teaching me a lot about Norway and its history. He even speaks some Old Norse he learned from his mom, though not fluent, being a dead language and all. Decides he wants us to go hiking. He has lived here his entire life and knows it like the back of his hand. We plan on being out for a couple of days, so we take bags and tents with us. First day hike goes without a hitch, getting to where we are camping a little later than we planned. Set up camp, make a quick dinner, hit the hay. Wake up in the middle of the night. Gotta use the bathroom. Walk out of camp, do my business. Head back. Next day we woke up. We start walking, chatting on and off. Walk for probably 5 hours, about 1500. Great-grandpa starts looking confused, muttering to himself, obviously not happy. Ask him what's up. Says he's never been here before. The lands are not right. Starts muttering about the trail, getting a bit pissed. Checks the compass. It's just spinning wildly. This is not a good place to be lost. Wandering a bit more, trying to orient ourselves. It's getting dark now, so we find ourselves a nice nook in the mountain to set up camp. It's starting to rain, so the overhang is keeping us dry. Wake up to what sounds like laughing in the middle of the night. Decide to check it out. Great-grandpa is out like a rock. Man can sleep through anything. Wander towards the sound, walking through the woods. It's pretty dark. Start to hear dogs braying in the distance. Don't think anything of it. Must be other people. Stumble into the clearing, looking like the remains of a rough campsite. A couple of lean-to, the remains of a fire. There's a striped deer carcass hanging from the tree. Braying picks up again, this time accompanied by some shouting and laughing. Keep walking towards it. I'm probably 3 or 4 miles from camp. Break out onto a ridge with the mountain opening up in front of me. Look down and see a couple people running. Look behind them and see 3 or 4 men on horses with probably 10 or 15 of the biggest dogs I've ever seen following them. The people run for probably 10 minutes before the dogs catch up to them, biting them until they fall. Guy on lead horse trots up with a spear, didn't have one before, and sticks one of the people. The other screams and then gets stuck. Nope.jpg. Run back to camp. Wake up great-grandpa and tell him what happened. We don't even pack up the tent or bags or anything. We just grab our packs and run. Daybreak comes and we, somehow, even though we were 2 days up the mountain, stumble back onto his land, recognizing the little cairn that marks his border. He tells me to never tell anyone what I saw and refuses to talk about it. Fuck the hunt. Here's some more stories for you. Winter of that year. Great-grandpa says we need more firewood or we will run out. Head out to go grab some, just gonna run out and look for a fresh deadfall. Always prefer them to cutting down a nice living tree. Hiking a bit, just doing some wandering. Find a good log, hook it up with rope and start pulling it back. It's snowy, so it's pretty easy going. Walking back. I don't recognize this. It feels like I'm in a totally different woods. The trees feel off, I guess. Break out into a clearing. Sitting in the middle of it is a door, just standing there by itself, like that's normal. Go over, start digging through the snow, no foundation, no marks from there being a house there, nothing. Notice there's this humming noise, I can barely hear it. It gets louder the closer to the door I am. Push my ear against the door. There's voices on the other side, not speaking anything I know. Plus, you know, there's no behind the door, it's just sitting there. Nope. Walk home, log in tow, shit in pants. I never thought those woods would be so strange, but talking to the people in town, I found out that apparently they're known for being pretty weird. 4 or 5 people go missing a year, at minimum, and there's always weird noises and lights coming and going from the mountains. They say it's the Alpha. They get unhappy when we forget them, so they cause problems. Last one for a while, gotta do some work, then I will be back, if anyone's still interested. Couple of days before Yule, go out hiking because why not? Wandering around the now familiar trails, sticking to this ridge that runs along a river-carved gulch. I've probably been gone for 5 or 6 hours, just wandering. Start to hear what sounds like singing, music, etc. Wander into the woods where I hear it coming from. Investigation mode activated. It's getting kind of dark, I don't know if want.jpg. See light up ahead, music louder, whatever, I will check it out. Beautiful mountain meadow, probably 3 football fields in size, probably over 100 people, drinking, singing, eating, dancing, etc. All in traditional clothing, not that weird up here. Girl pops up next to me, starts talking to me. Thick accent from a dialect of Norwegian I don't speak, which is strange since I speak the local dialect, kind of. Asks me to dance, sure thing. End up joining in with them, dance, eat, drink a bit too much. Girl stays with me the whole time, pulls me into the woods. Implications. Come back, sit around their bonfire. Huge thing, had like 4 whole trees in it. Things are calming down, cuddling with girl, the like. She asked me to come back home with me. I say it's too late. My great-grandpa's probably worried about me. She gets a sad look, says goodbye and kisses me. Start trudging back home. Get there when the sun is breaking. Been out all night. Reek of booze and fire. Great-grandpa comes running to the door when he hears it up, demanding where I've been. Tell him I just went for a hike, sorry I was late. Yells at me that I've been gone for 3 days. Weirdest experience of my life. I honestly can't explain it. I think I almost got abducted by Alpha. Okay, last one for the night. Let me tell you the time I found the tracks of a troll in Norway. Be me, visiting my great-grandpa about a year back. Staying for about a month during summer holiday. Enjoying nature and the like. Walking around at dusk, just at the border of the property. I had been carving a runestone as a gift for my great-grandpa. Just as the sun sets behind the mountains and there's that faint twilight glow that only comes out at times like that, I start hearing these loud crashes coming from the woods, while later start hearing these loud, deep bellows and the sounds of trees snapping. Nope, head home, don't want to mess with what I'm assuming is a moose. The next day I got up early to go and check it out. Don't tell my great-grandpa what's up because he's still upset at all the stuff I've been getting into when I visit. About a half mile from where I had been, I find a trail through the woods that looks like it's been stampeded through by elephants. Trees snapped, thrown around, etc. Follow it for maybe another half a mile before I hit some muddy ground. See the biggest footprints, easily 4 feet long, with 3 big toes on it. Each step is probably 5 feet apart. This thing is big. There's a reason the mountains are called Jotunheimen.
Currently living in southern Thailand. People are extremely superstitious here. Ghosts, spirits, and earthang has invaded every facet of their society. You don't move into a place without a spirit house. Commercials are all about spirits. Here on a 3-month visa, traveling the world kind of deal. End up at a shitty, non-touristy little fishing village near Paknam Pran, if anybody is familiar. Go to a tarp bar, anybody who's been to Thailand will know. A bunch of plastic seats, shitty bar, and a tarp draped over the top. Proceed drunken white man mode. Only white guy there, about 8 or so Thais giving me the stink eye. 3 or 4 hours pass and it's around 5 a.m. Yes, you drink that late here. Last one left, they kick me out as I'm obliterated. Now before I proceed, drunkenness doesn't induce extreme, vivid hallucinations. The bottles I received were opened in front of me, no tomfoolery here. Proceed to walk back to my little hotel. A shitty shack, more like it. My car is parked out front, couldn't sleep in the hotel. The beds were full of AIDS and bed bugs. Said fuck it, so went to sleep in my car. In the process of opening the door and the trip to my car is where the shit went down. Horrid fucking smell like rotted feces. Start gagging, unlock the car and pull back seats. The ritual before tucking myself in. Kind of weirded out as the smell is permeating into the car. Figured it's the Thai stench, open sewer or whatever, even though we're on the fucking beach. Started seeing what looks like people's heads floating in the distance. Figured I was tired, though was extremely freaked out. Started noping and trying to sleep. Anxiety, shakes. The heads are getting closer to the car, they have no eyes and are just gliding. A small piece of spinal cord is falling where the torso should be, flying heads with no eyes and spines coming out of them. I start crying, throwing blanket overhead, fall asleep eventually, the fuck.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.